The Wall of Fire, the creation myth of Scientology. Scientology, a religion founded in the early 1950s by science fiction author L. Ron Hubbard, is rooted in a mixture of spiritual philosophy, science fiction, and psychological principles. Central to its belief system is a creation myth, known informally as the Wall of Fire, or officially as Incident 2, within the higher levels of the Church of Scientology. The story is primarily revealed at the operating Thetan, OT, levels, particularly OT3, and is not accessible to most Scientologists until they reach these advanced stages of spiritual development. The tale of the Wall of Fire is a detailed and dramatic narrative about the origin of human suffering and spiritual entrapment. It offers a cosmic explanation for the problems and challenges faced by humanity, and it suggests that only by advancing through the levels of Scientology can one escape the devastating effects of this event and achieve spiritual freedom. Below is an in-depth exploration of this story, its significance within Scientology, and the larger context in which it exists. Part 1. The background of Scientology's creation myth. 1.1. Foundations of Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard's development of Scientology began with his earlier work in Dianetics, a self-help system designed to improve mental and emotional well-being. Dianetics laid the groundwork for Scientology's more expansive spiritual worldview. In Dianetics, Hubbard proposed that the human mind is divided into two parts: the analytical mind, which functions like a perfect computer, and the reactive mind, which stores negative experiences as engrams, trapped memories that cause mental and physical harm. While Dianetics focused on healing the individual psyche, Scientology expanded these ideas into a broader spiritual framework. The central tenet of Scientology is the belief that human beings are essentially immortal spiritual beings, called Thetans, who are trapped in physical bodies. The Thetan, in its original state, is powerful and godlike, but through a series of cosmic events, it has been diminished and degraded over time. This spiritual decline is largely explained by the creation myth known as the Wall of Fire, which is part of the secret teachings revealed to advanced Scientologists. 1.2. The operating Thetan levels. The path to spiritual enlightenment in Scientology involves progressing through various levels of spiritual development, known as operating Thetan, OT, levels. An operating Thetan is a being who has regained control over themselves and their environment, no longer subject to the limitations of the physical world or the reactive mind. The OT levels are a series of steps that Scientologists must complete in order to free themselves from spiritual bondage. OT3, which contains the story of the Wall of Fire, is considered one of the most important and challenging stages on this path. According to Scientology doctrine, without proper preparation and guidance, exposure to the information in OT3 can be spiritually dangerous. Hubbard himself referred to it as the Wall of Fire, a barrier that few could cross without significant risk. It is said to contain revelations about the true nature of existence and the cosmic events that led to humanity's current state of spiritual decay. Part 2. The story of the Wall of Fire. 2.1. The Galactic Confederacy. The story begins 75 million years ago, in a distant part of the galaxy, where a vast and powerful organization known as the Galactic Confederacy governed many planets. This confederation was made up of 26 stars and 76 planets, including Earth, which at that time was known as Tegiak. The Confederacy was led by an evil ruler named Xenu, sometimes spelled Xemu, who plays a central role in the creation myth. Xenu's reign was marked by growing discontent among the population of the Galactic Confederacy. The civilizations under his rule were facing a serious overpopulation problem, which had caused significant unrest and threatened his authority. Billions of beings lived on these planets, and their numbers were becoming unmanageable. 2.2. Xenu's plan. Fearing rebellion and the collapse of his empire, Xenu devised a genocidal plan to eliminate a large portion of the population and maintain his grip on power. He called upon the assistance of several corrupt officials within the government, and together, they set into motion one of the most destructive events in galactic history. Xenu's plan involved rounding up billions of people from the overpopulated planets. Under the guise of a tax inspection, these beings were lured into spaceships, which were shaped like DC-8 airplanes, a familiar Earth design. Once aboard, they were frozen in a process called glycol freezing. which incapacitated them and made them easy to transport. The frozen bodies were then flown to Earth, Tegeac, where they were deposited around various volcanoes. 2.3. The mass genocide. Once the beings were brought to Earth, Xenu unleashed a horrific weapon of mass destruction. He detonated hydrogen bombs in the volcanoes, killing billions of beings at once. This mass genocide was intended to solve the Confederacy's overpopulation crisis, but the story doesn't end with the destruction of the physical bodies. According to Hubbard's teachings, the spiritual beings of those murdered, the Thetans, did not perish with their bodies. Instead, their disembodied spirits were captured and subjected to a process of intense brainwashing. Xenu and his accomplices feared that if the Thetans were left to roam free, they would seek revenge or disrupt the stability of the Confederacy. 2.4. The R6 implants. In order to prevent the Thetans from regaining their freedom and posing a threat to his rule, Xenu created a complex system of mental implants, known as the R6 implants. These implants were designed to confuse and manipulate the Thetans, erasing their memories and programming them with false information. This process took place in massive theaters, where the Thetans were forced to watch a series of images and narratives for 36 days straight. The implants were intended to obliterate the Thetans' knowledge of their true origins and their godlike potential. Instead, they were given a distorted view of reality, which included religious concepts, symbols, and ideas that would later influence human civilization on Earth. Among the implanted ideas were many of the concepts found in modern religions, such as God, the devil, heaven, and hell. These ideas were part of the brainwashing intended to keep Thetans trapped in a cycle of ignorance and subjugation. 2.5. The aftermath and the prison planet. After the implantation process was complete, the Thetans were left disoriented and confused. They had lost their sense of identity and purpose and were bound to Earth, unable to leave. Over time, these Thetans began to cluster together, forming what Scientology refers to as body Thetans. These are disembodied spiritual beings that attach themselves to living individuals, contributing to mental and physical distress. Every human being, according to Scientology, is inhabited by thousands or even millions of these body Thetans, each of which carries the trauma of Xenu's genocide and brainwashing. As a result of Xenu's actions, Earth became a kind of prison planet, where Thetans were trapped in a perpetual cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation. Over the millions of years that followed, these Thetans continued to inhabit physical bodies, completely unaware of their true nature and their potential for spiritual freedom. 2.6. Xenu's downfall. Despite his efforts to maintain control, Xenu's reign eventually came to an end. The loyal officers of the Galactic Confederacy rose up against him, and he was captured and imprisoned in a remote location within a mountain, where he remains to this day, held in perpetual confinement by a force field powered by an eternal battery. While Xenu is no longer in power, the damage he caused continues to affect every human being on Earth. The Wall of Fire represents the lingering effects of this ancient cosmic catastrophe, which can only be overcome through the advanced spiritual practices of Scientology. Part 3. The significance of the Wall of Fire in Scientology. 3.1. The impact of the Wall of Fire on humanity. The Wall of Fire is a metaphor for the immense spiritual and psychological trauma that every individual carries as a result of the events described in the OT3 teachings. According to Scientology, this trauma manifests in various forms, including mental illness, physical ailments, and emotional suffering. The clusters of body Thetans that inhabit each person are responsible for many of the problems that plague humanity, from irrational fears and compulsions to chronic pain and disease. For Scientologists, understanding the Wall of Fire and the story of Xenu is essential to achieving spiritual freedom. Only by confronting and processing the memories of this ancient catastrophe can an individual begin to free themselves from the influence of body Thetans and reclaim their true spiritual potential. 3.2. The role of auditing in overcoming the Wall of Fire. The primary method for dealing with the lingering effects of the Wall of Fire is a process known as auditing. Auditing is a form of spiritual counseling that involves the use of an e-meter, a device that measures the body's electrical resistance, which is believed to correlate with the presence of engrams and other mental blockages. During auditing sessions, Scientologists work with trained auditors to identify and confront the memories and traumas associated with the Wall of Fire. By doing so, they gradually clear themselves of these spiritual impurities, allowing them to progress through the OT levels. At the OT3 level, this process involves identifying and addressing the presence of body thetans and helping them to move on, thereby freeing the individual from their influence. 3.3. The goal of operating thetan. The ultimate goal of Scientology is to reach the state of operating thetan, in which an individual has fully regained their spiritual freedom and power. At this level, the thetan is no longer bound by the limitations of the physical body or the reactive mind. They are able to operate independently of the material world, exercising control over their environment and their own existence. However, the journey to this state is long and difficult. The Wall of Fire represents one of the greatest challenges on the path to enlightenment, and only those who are fully prepared can hope to cross it. Ron Hubbard himself warned that the information contained in OT3 was extremely dangerous and could be harmful to those who were not spiritually ready to receive it. Part 4. The larger context of the Wall of Fire. 4.1. Comparison to other creation myths. The story of the Wall of Fire bears some similarities to other creation myths from various cultures and religions. Many creation myths involve a primordial event in which humanity is either created or trapped in a state of suffering by a powerful being. For example, in Christianity, the story of the fall of man describes how Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden and condemned to a life of hardship after disobeying God. Similarly, in Gnostic traditions, the material world is seen as a prison created by a malevolent deity from which the human spirit must escape. In Scientology, Xenu plays the role of the malevolent figure who traps humanity in a cycle of suffering, while Thetans, like the souls in Gnostic and Christian teachings, are seeking liberation from their physical and spiritual bondage. 4.2. Science fiction roots. Ron Hubbard's background as a science fiction writer is evident in the Wall of Fire myth. The story contains many elements typical of science fiction, including advanced technology, interstellar travel, and galactic civilizations. The spaceships, hydrogen bombs, and mind control devices described in the narrative are reminiscent of themes found in many of Hubbard's earlier science fiction stories. The blending of science fiction with spiritual teachings is one of the defining characteristics of Scientology. The Wall of Fire represents a fusion of ancient religious ideas with modern technological concepts, creating a unique and complex worldview that appeals to those interested in both spirituality and speculative fiction. 4.3. Secrecy and controversy. The Wall of Fire and the story of Xenu are among the most controversial aspects of Scientology. The Church has gone to great lengths to keep this information secret, restricting access to OT3 materials to those who have undergone extensive preparation and spiritual training. Scientologists believe that revealing the details of the Wall of Fire to unprepared individuals could cause serious harm, both spiritually and physically. Despite these efforts, the story of Xenu has become widely known outside the Church, thanks in part to leaks and legal battles. Critics of Scientology often point to the Wall of Fire as an example of the Church's fantastical and pseudo-scientific beliefs. However, for devoted Scientologists, the story holds deep spiritual significance and represents a key step on the path to enlightenment. Part 5. Conclusion. The Wall of Fire, as described in the OT3 teachings of Scientology, is a creation myth that explains the origins of human suffering and spiritual entrapment. According to this narrative, a galactic ruler named Xenu carried out a mass genocide 75 million years ago, imprisoning billions of Thetans on Earth and subjecting them to intense brainwashing. The spiritual trauma caused by this event continues to affect humanity to this day, manifesting in the form of body Thetans and other mental and physical ailments. For Scientologists, the Wall of Fire represents a significant barrier on the path to spiritual freedom. Through the practice of auditing and the gradual progression through the OT levels, individuals can confront and overcome the effects of this ancient catastrophe, ultimately reclaiming their true nature as powerful spiritual beings. While the story of the Wall of Fire is shrouded in secrecy and controversy, it remains a central element of Scientology's belief system and a key component of its promise of personal and spiritual transformation. This comprehensive account of the Wall of Fire illustrates not only its importance within the Church of Scientology, but also its role as a modern creation myth that fuses elements of ancient spiritual teachings with the imaginative world of science fiction.